Hi Table Tennis Junkies. In this week's video, I'll be teaching you all about the third ball attack and how to set yourself up for it, why you should use it, and when you should use it. This was actually a video request in the comments section of a previous video, and I'm happy to make it, so let's get started. So you might have heard me talk about the third ball attack in previous videos, or maybe you've heard about it from other players or other coaches. Before we get started though, I'd like to just quickly define what the third ball is before we move into the third ball attack and all of its benefits. The third ball is essentially the third shot in the rally, and it'll be your first hit after you serve the ball. So starting with the serve, that'll be shot number 1, followed by the return from your opponent, shot number 2, and then your own follow-up after your serve, shot number 3, or third ball. The third ball attack is when you hit that third ball with either a loop or an aggressive shot. Notice I said loop or aggressive shot. Sometimes these are the same, but they're not technically the same thing, and I'll be getting to that later in this video, but it's important to be able to distinguish between the two. This is a major key in table tennis because most points are determined by the person who attacks first, and the third ball is your first opportunity to attack the ball after you serve. This is why it's such an important technique and why it's so widely used in table tennis. Now that you know what the third ball attack is and the importance of it for your game, let's talk about how to set yourself up for it. The first thing to note with the third ball attack is that you need to look for it. Pay special attention to this tip because it's one of the most important parts of the shot and it's often overlooked. If you don't actively look to loop, then you won't because it's hard and it takes time to prepare and get set for the attack. So if you're not really looking for it, then you're not going to get set for it and you're going to be late and you're not going to get it into your game. So make sure you're actively looking for the third ball attack if you want to implement it into your game. The next tip that I want to mention is that the third ball attack is directly impacted from the serve that you decide to do. This is why I like to talk about how I prepare for the next shot in most of my serving videos, because this is what I'm usually most interested in with most of my serves. Before I serve, I like to think to myself, how is this going to impact the third ball attack? And that way I know how to move and where to move for that third ball attack. And you should be conscious of it too. Let's go over some serves and how I would prepare for the third ball attack for each one. Let's start with the fast no spin or dead ball serve. So if I were to serve a pendulum fast, the ball is going to come back fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare for the third ball by getting away from the table a little bit. So I'll have a little bit more time and space to return the fast ball that's going to come back at me. So another thing with the fast serves is that the opponent will generally return it cross court because that's where they're going to have the most amount of space to return the ball. So if I serve cross court into the backhand, I'll back up a little bit and prepare for a backhand return. If I were to serve fast down the line, I'll shift over to my right and prepare for a forehand return. If I were to serve the pendulum fast with topspin on it, it's very similar to the dead ball serve, but there's a little bit of a difference. So I'll still step back and prepare for the ball to be coming fast at me, but with the topspin, on the return, sometimes it'll hop a little bit more, so I'll be maybe just a little bit more cautious on my third ball attack if I serve fast topspin. If I were to serve a short, low backspin ball, that's going to limit my opponent to some sort of push, either a short push or a deep push. In either case, I'm going to want to stay close to the table on this one. So if I were to serve a short backspin that's low and then I were to back up, that would be the wrong move to make because the next shot will either be short backspin or deep backspin, and I'll either have to step in for the push or I'll have to step in for the backspin loop. And either way, I'll want to step in. So after serving a backspin that's low and short, I'm going to want to stay close to the table and stay low. We could do this for every serve, but hopefully you get the idea. So if you are to serve fast, you'll probably want to step back a little bit to give yourself some space for the third ball. If you were to serve something short and low or with backspin, you probably want to stay closer to the table to prepare for the third ball on that one. Let's talk about side spin. Most of the serves that you do will have some degree of side spin on them. And side spin is an excellent way to set yourself up for the third ball attack because it's pretty easy to add it to your serves. And it's going to pull the ball to one direction or the other, so it'll help predict where your opponent will return your serve. So for instance, if you were to do the pendulum serve, the side spin on this serve is going to pull the ball into the backhand. So you might want to anticipate this by turning the corner and using your forehand for the third ball attack. Another example might be if you were to do the tomahawk serve or the backhand serve. The side spins on those serves will pull the ball into your forehand, so you can anticipate this by maybe shifting into the forehand a little bit and preparing for that. You can also combine your side spins with normal top spins and back spins, and maybe with fast serves and short serves in different locations to help further predict where your opponent is going to return the serve, which will help you on the third ball attack. Something to keep in mind before every serve you do is to think about how your serve is going to impact your opponent's return of that serve. That way you can move and prepare for the third ball attack. You want to do this before you actually serve it. And I'm going to say it again because it's just so important. You need to know your serves and know the likely returns from your opponent based off that specific serve. Some key things that are going to impact your opponent's return are your serve's speed, your serve's depth, the spin you put on the serve, the height of the serve, and the location of the serve. Each of those things will play a factor into how your opponent will return the ball, and you really need to think about how your movement and your ready position will be affected based on each of those things. If your serves are high, topspin, or fast, you're going to want to prepare for the third ball by stepping away from the table. If your serves are low, short, or backspin, you'll probably want to stay close to the table and prepare for the third ball that way. And remember to always factor in the side spin on your serves because the ball is probably going to pull to one direction or the other. If you're an aggressive or offensive player, I strongly recommend that you look for and use the third ball attack technique as often as you can. If you're a blocker or a chopper, then it's probably not as important for your game, but there are still a lot of choppers like Chen Wei-Shing from Austria who use a third ball attack technique, and he wins a lot of points with it. So you can still use this technique even if you're a blocker or a chopper, but especially if you're an aggressive player. Something important about the third ball attack technique is that it doesn't need to win you the point outright. You can use the third ball attack to set yourself up for the fifth ball. This is what I meant in the beginning of the video when I said you should differentiate between a loop and an attack shot. The third ball attack can be very difficult to do, especially if the serve has a lot of spin on it or if it's barely coming off the end of the table. So a good response is, instead of being really aggressive and driving through the ball, would be to really spin the ball and place it to a spot where your opponent is forced to block it. You can then follow this up with a much more aggressive fifth ball attack. For instance, what would your response be if I were to loop a well-placed ball to you? Not necessarily fast and hard, but something that was just spinny and well-placed. Well, I hope your response would be that you would block it. So what will happen is if I loop to you and you block it, that next ball is generally going to be much easier than the third ball because I don't need to worry about the spin, or the side spin is usually not nearly as prevalent on that fifth ball, so it's much cleaner and it's going to be bounding forward towards me, so I can be more aggressive with a more forward loop on the fifth ball. For much of my career, this is how I like to play, where I would loop that third ball with a lot of spin and good placement and force my opponent into blocking, and then I would be real aggressive on the fifth ball. You can still play it this way, but when the ITTF changed the ball in 2014, it made this technique a little bit more difficult because it's much harder to get good topspin with the new ball. So what happens is your opponent isn't as locked into a block. They can be a little more aggressive on the block, which makes the fifth ball harder. So what I do now is I'm actually a little bit more aggressive on the third ball attack because there's not as much spin on that, and also the spinny loop isn't as effective anymore. This actually brings me to a new topic that's not super related to the third ball attack, but it still is really important for table tennis, so I'm going to mention it, and that's the ability to adapt. Things in table tennis are always changing, whether it's something big like the ITTF changing the ball, or maybe it's your opponent changing the serve depth, but you need to be able to change and adapt with the game. Many matches are determined by who can adjust and change more effectively. An example might be like I might change my serve, but then my opponent might change the way they're returning that serve, so I'll have to change, and it's really kind of a chess match between the two players and who can adjust and change more effectively. Being able to adapt and modify is so important in any sport, but especially in table tennis because things move and change so quickly. That's all for this week's video. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and if you have any questions about the third ball, put those in the comments too. Don't forget to subscribe and give the video a thumbs up if you found it helpful for your game, and thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next week.